Hey there guys, the PC guy here, and Intel finally announced and launched their 10th generation Comet Lake, and well, yeah, it's kind of what we were expecting. I have to admit I didn't have a whole lot of time to go through the details of the launch, however I did get a look at the specs list, and there's a lot of other factors to take into account that we already have known for a while how they were going to work out, so there's at least some debate to be had, and I'll do my best to do a fair analysis of, well, what it is. As has been the case for now, it's going to be a 14nm process CPU, which is potentially going to be the last or second to last generation on 14nm, still slightly unknown, but possibly the last. And it is going to run on LGA 1200 sockets, so not the 1151 that we're used to anymore. So that is going to require you a new motherboard if you were to upgrade. We'll come back to that in a little bit, because that's certainly worth discussing as well. As always, wait for reviews before actually pre-ordering it. Some of them I do believe them wholeheartedly that they are true, others I am slightly more doubtful, and we'll have to wait for confirmation to actually see how they pan out. The pricing is another point I will want to discuss, because it's definitely a little bit of a disappointment, or well, I should say not really a surprise, because we know how Intel has been for the past few years in terms of pricing, but it's definitely worth touching. And last of all, I will be kind of comparing them side by side to comparable Zen 2 processors, because it is the competition, so why not? And kind of giving my opinion and thoughts on how exactly they pan out against each other. Let's start off by looking at the Intel page on their website for the launch of these products. I apologize if there's a little bit of noise. RTX voice is running. I'm not sure if it's doing anything, but it is making my graphics card coil whine quite a bit. So hopefully it is actually working and blurring that out. In any case, looking at the slide page for it, they do make a bunch of a bunch of feature listings that are, as per usual in pages like this, not exactly very detailed. They claim, for example, support of Intel Optane memory. Well, yeah, you better support Optane memory, it's your own thing. Anyway, for things that actually matter, they claim, for example, streaming and recording with up to 5.3 gigahertz, and we'll come back to that when we get to the specs. And as far as actual features that are new and included, we have an inclusion, for example, Wi-Fi 6 that has been validated not so long ago. And while it is good that they support it, keep in mind that this is not really usable right now, at least not for the majority of the world. As far as I know, only in the US is Wi-Fi 6 starting to be used, emphasis on starting, and it's probably going to take quite a while in the rest of the world. It also probably will matter a lot less for desktops than for example, laptops and such, so desktop users among us, it's kind of a bit of a waste. One thing I do have to give a thumbs up to Intel is that they are announcing the launch of the system, and they are immediately showing and launching, including prices and the rest of the specs, for several laptops featuring their mobile 10th gen systems. In this case, 9 different laptops, like different price points. They don't start cheap, mind you. We have to remember that Intel has OEM deals with a lot more brands than AMD does, so it's not a surprise that they managed to pull this off. Moving on to the slides that you can find on the Intel website, obviously a slight introduction, a few things, up to 4.8 gigahertz all-core, the velocity boost and all that stuff. I'm going to touching all that in literally a minute. Claims about being the Intel's fastest game processor, well yeah, it's your latest one and it's the flagship. And get amazing overclocking headroom, they claim, with an unlocked 10th gen. So once again, you will need a K processor to actually overclock, otherwise your CPU is locked and you cannot touch the multipliers. And they are claiming amazing overclocking headroom. Now, I will just scroll back down to the specs, because I do need to address that point, and I cannot do that without looking at the specs. And they have, for example, the 4.8 gigahertz boost all-core on their Core i9, or well, 4.9 at tops, but trust me, you're not going to see this happen very often. And yeah, if you think, for example, the 9900KS, it boosted 5 gigs all cores, and granted, they added 2 cores to the 10900K. However, amazing overclocking headroom when you're not even beating your latest generation flagship in terms of performance. all-core performance that is, that's a bold claim, especially considering it's the same architecture, same IPC, same everything, basically, tiny improvements, and you're claiming a lot of overclocking headroom. That's something I'll need to actually see with my own eyes to believe, because I am expecting that the power requirements and the thermal requirements for those CPUs will be very, very tight. I do not expect to be a lot of performance left on the board for overclocking. I think it's going to be a challenge to keep it cool at stock even, let alone to have amazing overclocking headroom as they claim. In terms of features that are here on the feature list that they include in the slides, thermal velocity boost is something new, and it means that it will boost up to 5.3 GHz as long as your temperature is under the 70 degrees, which, like I said, I doubt it will happen very often on a processor that is a 10-core, 20-thread with an architecture from 3-4 years ago. So I don't think you'll see this happen very fast unless you're underwater. And if you're underwater, you're basically overclocking it, because why would you have a custom loop if you're not overclocking it to begin with? So this is kind of a moot point for me as far as marketing goes. Turbo 3.0, that is a new type of turbo boost that they are introducing. That, well, it's basically a slightly higher version of the normal boost, featuring mostly boosts to when you are only using a certain number of cores in any case. The support for 2933 memory, not really much of a big deal, because as we all know, Intel CPUs support much higher memory with XMP anyway, so this is just the official support. There was actually a situation a few weeks back or months where people were actually stopped from returning or remaining their Intel CPUs if they were malfunctioning, if they admitted to having, well, not overclock the CPU, because that breaks the warranty, which on itself is funny because a lot of the marketing is based on overclocking performance, and yet they refuse your warranty if you admit to have overclocked, which they cannot prove if you did or not, mind you, so you would have to admit to it, really. But people were being denied their warranty returns if they had admitted to overclocking the memory as well, even though it has no impact on the CPU, via XMP profiles, which Intel actually uses on their slides. Now this is an increase to the memory supported without XMP profiles, so it's basically kind of raising the limit of how far they will kind of officially support memory, while the higher support really already exists, just not officially. Skipping a few things, Intel UHD graphics, I mean, yeah, play today's modern games, yes, with the integrated graphics. I mean, you guys are in a tech channel, you know how these things work. You're not going to play anything with those integrated graphics, especially considering it's the exact same as past generations. There are talks of PCIe Gen 4 next generation, but it is kind of missing from these CPUs, so you will not be able to have PCIe Gen 4 compatibility in the future with these CPUs either. Instead, one new feature is the ability to, for example, turn on or off hyperthreading for each individual core, which, let's face it, is probably not going to see a lot of use other than enthusiast overclocking circles. As for specs, they are not really listing the entire CPU lineup here. I do have a page after it, but just skimming through this very, very simplified spec list, just because it's the official. Basically, you have a bump of 1 to 200 MHz all across the base and boost clocks. You have the intervelocity boost, the 5.3 GHz under 70 degrees that I mentioned, only available on the Core i9, so that's the only ones you're gonna get. It is the 10900K family, or 10900. And as far as cores and threads goes, you get 2 extra cores and, well, obviously 4 extra threads on the i9 compared to the 9900K from last generation. And all the other families, they remain the same basically in terms of core count. They do, however, enable hyperthreading across the board, which they had not in previous generation, and it's almost like they could have done it all along, huh? You get the 4 MB increase on cache size on the i9 and i7, and 3 MB increase cache size on the lower versions, and for the rest, not a whole lot changes. So for a full spec list on the lineup, and yes, I am on Wikipedia, and yes, I have checked that it is updated and correct, and not just, random leaked information from before, and that's not accurate. just that it's a better thing to visualize this here than on a lot of other slides that I noticed. In any case, we have the full lineup. The T ones are the mobile, so we're not really going to be focusing on that. And on the i9 family, we have the 10900, 10900K, and the F variant. That is the one without integrated GPU, so you will basically not be able to run it without the graphics card. The clocks I have already mentioned in the past slide anyway, and what I wanted to focus at here really is what well, the names and what SKUs are already pretty much known. You have K and KF across the entire family, all the way down to the 10600. And under that, the Ks are basically eliminated and they are all locked. So if you want to overclock, you need at least a 10600K, nothing under that. After that, you do have the choice to, for example, go without integrated graphics on some of them, but not even on all, because the 10500 still has no integrated graphics option. In any case, what I really wanted to look at here is the TDP and the pricing. For example, 125 watt TDP for the 10900K, nice joke, isn't it? And 65 watts for all the parts that are not K, or the ones that are under the 10600. So yeah, basically all the ones that are not unlocked are at 65 watts, and the unlocked ones are at 125 watts. 9900K had TDP, yeah, let's say 95 watts. Sure it was. The 9900, so basically the non-K version, also had 65 watts. So now they're telling us that where is it again? That the 10900 with the same 65 watts can run 2 cores and 4 threads at the higher frequencies without major architectural changes, no node shrinks, no new architectures, no nothing. Very much doubt, but we all know how TDP is calculated at Intel's and well, also at AMD's, but to a more bigger extent at Intel. We all know it's not accurate, so let's really not focus on that. And it's the pricing that I once again wanted to focus on. This is the 10900K starting at 488. And let's I'm not going to go through the entire list because you guys get the point. 10700K at 374. Compare that to last generation, 488, 374. The difference, you could check the entire list, but I already did, and the differences are very, very minimal in terms of the prices for each tier. And it's almost like Intel has no viable competition right now. Like, oh wait, it has. So it looks like their pricing department has not caught up on the fact that Ryzen is very much competitive right now and actually beating Intel in a lot of cases. And yeah, although this is just guesswork because it's not like I have CPUs in hand to test or anything like that. So yeah, my guess is Intel is going to be ahead on single core performance. They already are, so it would be kind of strange if they suddenly stopped being that. So no questions asked there. Multi-threaded, they are probably going to approach AMD's Ryzen offerings, perhaps beating them in some cases. However, the cost in terms of thermal performance, I think it will be a very high cost to pay, and I think we'll have a lot of trouble keeping the chips cool. You also have to keep in mind that we are comparing them with the Zen 2 parts that are available right now from a year ago, and that there are going to be Zen 3 before the end of this year, so in the next, like, say, 5-6 months, we're probably going to be seeing Zen 3 on the shelves. And yeah, unlike Intel, those are on an enhanced process. They are going to have, from what we heard so far, 8 to 15% IPC increase. So 1 gigahertz on AMD is worth more than 1 gigahertz on Intel. It already is, and that gap is going to keep widening because there is no architectural change and no node shrink or process improvement on Intel's side, but there is on AMD. So yeah, that performance difference is going to be pretty massive, and I don't think whatever extra performance Intel has scrapped between last generation and this one is going to make up for it, because they were basically tied, single-digit difference on similar SKUs last generation, and I think that the difference will grow to AMD's side. But in any case, Intel has a few months to actually, pat themselves on the back and possibly gain some slight relevance, I suppose. And well, hope to sell a few units before the storm hits again. By now, I know you guys are probably already waiting for the comparison with the current Zen 2 part, so let's take a look at that. Starting at the bottom of the stack with Zen 2, we have the recently announced, actually, Ryzen 3 3100 and 3300X. They sell for 99 and 120 each. They are 4 cores, 8 threads, max boost of 3.9, 4.3. Let's compare them with the bottom of the stack on Intel, which they both sell for more, 122, and the boost clocks are actually similar, but again, IPC on AMD is valued more in my eyes than IPC on Intel in terms of how they actually compare, so the AMD parts are probably going to be beating them. Besides, they are cheaper in any case. This part here, it might as well not exist because it's just completely irrelevant. Slightly further up on the 3600 and 3600X, this is the bulk of the sales. This is really what makes the bread and butter of AMD. So we are seeing 199 on the 3600 and 249 on the 3600X with boost clock 4.4, etc. I'm not going to focus too much on this, mostly on the cores and threads, so 6 to 12. So the 3600X could be comparable, for example, to the, let's say, the 1060K. We are talking $262 at an all-core turbo 4.5 against 249, so comparable price. The Ryzen one is actually cheaper. Remains to be seen exactly performance, one against each other, the other, which one will beat it. I am willing to say that the Intel offering might actually win this game, especially on single thread. On all-core, have my doubts, but we'll have to wait and see. Actually, on second thought, I think Intel will win most of the head-to-head things here, to be quite honest. Again, Zen 2, Zen 3 will be a completely different story, and it's only a few months away. So it's a short reprieve, and these CPUs from Intel will be around for another year and a half, 2 years perhaps. So it's going to be a long drought after these few months of relevance, if you ask me. Going up to the 700K family, at 374 compared to the, let's say, where's the 700X? 374 compared to 329, that's a lot. That's a big difference right there, even if it is faster in some things. Even the 3800X is, well, a little bit less appealing. However, I don't think that CPU was ever very appealing to begin with, considering same cores and threads, not a very big difference in frequency, etc., etc. So it was never really much of a draw. Now for the 3900X, which is what really matters here, $499 for the 3900X. That was the MSRP. All the prices I'm talking about are MSRP. $49.99, that is just a hint over the 10900K, and you get 2 cores added to that, as well as 4 threads, obviously. So for the people that actually have a use for it, because that's CPU that you only buy if you actually use for work, unless you're super enthusiastic about it. For those 2 cores, 4 threads are definitely going to be worth that, and the difference in performance in terms of single threaded will not be a bit so much of a problem, because if you're buying a heavily cored and threaded CPU, then you're going to be doing multi-threaded work. Like I just said, all those prices that I just gave you, they are MSRP, and Intel, they are what they are. They probably will be a good 20 euros more expensive at the store than you are seeing on the list right now, and AMDs have been out for a while. They are known to go on sales or sell relatively frequently, and AMD is known to price drop when they have to, and quite frequently actually. So I do expect CPU prices on AMD's side to go down quite rapidly very soon in response to this, and when they do, I think they will, even if they're not at the top of the stack anymore like they are now, they will be definitely the most attractive proposition. They become an even more attractive proposition when you realize that the next generation Zen 3 is probably gonna beat Intel. Cannot really say for sure, but pretty sure. And they are going to be on the same socket. They're going to be on AM4. You can be on Zen 2 right now. You could even be on B450 right now, and you would be able to put Zen 3 there several years from now if you wanted to upgrade or whatever. Intel, and I said I was going to come back to this point later on. Not so much. You're basically needing to get a new motherboard for what is basically another refresh. You do get 2 extra cores if you're going for the i9, but for the rest of the lineup, you don't really get a whole lot for your motherboard upgrade, and it's not going to be a cheap motherboard upgrade. Going to go there in a second. You're going to get support for at most 1 extra generation after this, and after that, there's no information about that, but you guys, if you've been watching the tech world for a little bit, you know how Intel works and exactly what it's going to happen. There is not going to be support after that. It's been a long day at work and I wanted to get this video out still today, so I might have missed the news on motherboards. I think some were actually ending the embargo today as well, but I did not actually see any full-on reveals and pricings, etc. This is a leak, mind you, that has been floating for a while now. Some motherboards that leaked, including pricing, might not be completely accurate, but it would not surprise me. And comparing here, for example, and this is the ones from MSI were the ones that the prices leak, and there's a whole list here. And I'm going to go with one of the more accessible ones, well, traditionally more accessible, the Z490 Tomahawk. They're listing it at 240 euros, so in USD that would be along the lines of the 270-ish. And comparing for, I'm just going to go on the price comparison side here, to the Z390, 156, so let's call that around the 170, around the 180 USD. So you see how much of a difference that is. That's basically an 80 euros difference in the same model, same tier of motherboards from the same brand. That's a huge jump. And what exactly are you getting for that those extra 80 euros really? You might get PCI Gen 4 from CPU to, for example, PCIe slots or M.2, but not on the chipset. It's not on the motherboard chipset at all. What you really get is, remember that leak a few weeks ago that the 10900K was soaking up a whole 200 and whatever watts. It was more than 2080 Super. That was the whole punchline on the article. Yeah, it's not cheap to cool VRMs while delivering that sort of power, and they probably had to beef up their cooling systems on, especially around the VRM areas and such, a lot, and that probably did not come super cheap, so expect motherboards to be more expensive. So not only you have to get a new one that you probably won't be able to use for super long, but they also are going to be more expensive than they have ever been before. So whatever proposition you are getting, you have to shell out a new motherboard, which you don't with AMD. Yeah, you don't have to buy a new motherboard there as often. Intel you do. Now the motherboards are more expensive to boot and they will probably not last you for as long, and you don't really get a whole lot of bang for your buck there. You're better off buying a second-hand Z390 and 9900K from someone that's enough of a fool to actually go for the 10900K, and you get a lot better value than you get here. And well, just roll with it for a year or two until the 7nm is out on Intel or something like that, or well, 10nm even, or until you're ready to upgrade to something else, because this, if you are on 9th generation, this is definitely not worth upgrading for. It's way too much of a price jump in terms of motherboard. The CPUs, you would expect that the price should be lower in face of competition. They are not. You do not get a whole lot of extra for your buck, and it's just in general not worth it. What I would do right now, if I really wanted top of the line stuff, the best of the best, do you really want it now? And how often are you going to be replacing stuff for the sake of just having the best of the best? If you have money to burn, sure, go for it. This is probably going to be the best for the next 6 months or so. So if that's your goal, then yeah, this is the ones you should get. This should be available sometime next month. Knock yourself out. If you actually have to plan your upgrades to last for a few years at least, or at least a year or two, I would either go with what I have right now and wait for Zen 3 if you can hold out for another few months, or if you really want to upgrade now, or at least, like, let's say your PC breaks down, don't go for this. It's a bad choice just all around. You can get an high-end X570 ready to carry you into the next generation and be able to actually do a good CPU, slap a 3600 there, it will be good enough to hold you there for 6 months, and then upgrade to the 4900X or whatever it's going to be called, and you're going to have a kick-ass CPU that will last you for I don't know how long, or 4950X, whatever the hell they come up with. It will beat Intel's, I am pretty sure of that, and this is coming from someone that actually has never owned an AMD CPU, so that should tell you something. This has been a bit of a rant, sorry for making it so long. It was supposed to be a video about RTX Voice, about how to install it today, but this got launched today, so kind of had to squeeze it in between. Hope I'll see you guys in the next video. Remember to subscribe and drop a like and comment, tell me what you think of my interpretation of the specs and such. It would be greatly appreciated if you guys subscribed, because that's what we need to get some more brand support, and maybe possibly one day in the future having the chance to actually review these chips and giving you guys hard numbers instead of just guessing. So I hope I'll see you in the next video, and have fun in the meantime.